Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Jessica Clemons, and the finale of Invincible introduced us to an emotionally disastrous and psychopathic Viltrumite named Conquest. None of us expected his trauma dump in the middle of the beatdown. There was also so many changes they made from the original material that conveyed a different view to the Viltrumites, in my opinion. I kind of feel bad for them, but not as much as you think I do. This speech that Conquest gives has a bigger picture and foreshadows the events I expect to see in Season 4. So in this video, I'll be covering the key changes from the original material, talking about the crazy speech, of course, and also getting into what we can look forward to in Season 4. And I will also try to stay away from the comic book spoilers, but we can deduce together. But first, be sure to check out nerdriot.shop, where you can always grab the latest and greatest in Rockstars merch. Right now, we've got some designs inspired by Daredevil Born Again, like this Daredevil Punisher shirt. And I say it once, I'll say it again. This is the Frank Castle Punisher, not that piece of crap at the end of the 3rd episode. We also got some merch inspired by the Fantastic Four, Star Wars, and a ton of other fandoms. You guys go support the channel through nerdriot.shop. Go get some nerdy looking clothes. All right, now let's get into this video because I love Invincible. So Season 1 of Invincible covered issues 1 to 13, and Season 2 arguably had a lot of different little changes, but the issues are really the early 20s to 45, and Season 3 covered issues 48 to 65. So I rightfully expected Season 4 to cover a lot of issues from 66 to 79, offering us a chance to look ahead if we wanted to, because those issues are very fun. However, after this article dropped regarding the new original stories for Season 4, it might go in a different direction, or maybe the new original storyline will act as a filler to the central one that we're used to in the comics, which, you know, is fine. I'm here for it so long as you keep Nolan's story linear, because I love Nolan's story. I mentioned in my breakdown of Season 3 that a lot of the material we see in the show is mirrored in the comics and follows the comic storyline pretty well, though in the finale there were really big changes made departing from the original material that were major changes to how I see the Viltrumites that I have to tell you about. A lot of the changes in the finale from the original material really revolve around Conquest, and as it should. It made him so much more passionate, not to be confused with compassionate. In the comics, it was more of a mission and quest, and he was also just extremely angry. In the show, they showcase how much devotion and excitement this brings him. I mentioned in my finale breakdown that fighting Mark is like new, sloppy, uncoordinated, and he's built with so many surprises. He's beyond a perfect Viltrumite or an unready planet or army. He's so new to Conquest, it's like a literal toy that gets to fight him back. Unlike the comics, he acknowledged the warmth of my fist drenched in your blood and the blowing of the blood bubble in space, the blood heart bubble. This man was really written to be more committed and devoted to the act of killing than he was in the comics, in my opinion. In the comics, again, he was just a psychopath. Here, he's like a psychopath that has actual love in his heart, but that heart is for killing. He wants to eat our hearts. A huge takeaway we're all eating up from the finale is this fabulous monologue.
I am so lonely. No one wants to be my friend. They think I am unstable. Conquest. I don't even get a real name. Only a purpose.
This was created for the show, which is insane. In Conquest's monologue, he mentions being sent from planet to planet, committing atrocities in the Viltrumite name. He acknowledges how they made him into the very monster they're afraid of, and now he's being punished for that, making him very lonely, which is, you know, very heartbreaking. The psychology of a Viltrumite forced to suppress their emotions and feelings forever. This causes long-lasting detrimental psyche, which, you know, harms your brain in the way that we can see in Conquest, because he can so quickly and easily take over planets and kill anyone without remorse. This was important to showcase in the monologue because a similar sentiment is probably seen across a lot, if not all, of the Viltrumites. For example, Nolan's inner conflict with his mission, his objective, his entire purpose now falter with his feelings of having a family and a son. He, like the other Viltrumites, like Conquest, are built to not have feelings or convey them. They see it as a weakness, and again, noting Nolan's failure due to his feelings. Though this weakness is also their biggest op. They clearly have feelings. They all clearly care. This is a Viltrumite flaw that they never prepared for because they just denied it. And what's seen as a weakness could have been seen as their biggest strength, and I think they wanted to show that in his speech. I think in this speech, we're seeing that there could be a future where Viltrumites do succeed. They just have to act like human beings. They have to have feelings. They have to be in their emotions. And a reminder, there's less than 50 full-blooded Viltrumites, and every planet they ransack creates another horrid story behind a Viltrumite. There's a coalition against the Viltrumites. Had they stopped for 1 second to understand their impact on everyone, and how if they maybe did, could catch more bees with honey than vinegar, they need support at this moment. They need allies. There's literal books on how to kill them. They need to tap into their feelings. They need to be more human. It also begs the question of how often you think Conquest has these talks before killing people, or is it only with Mark because he respects the fight? It feels like this is the closest Conquest can really get to connecting with someone beyond a fist, you know what I mean? But maybe it's the fact that others don't really get to hear what he has to say after his formal introduction. It also shows the extent of the Viltrumite brainwashing behind his emotions. He can't even express his feelings to someone in prison for life or someone preparing for a Viltrumite execution. He's still so repressed that he must voice these thoughts in private, away from any other full-blooded Viltrumite, 2 degrees away from killing the person he's confessing to. How sad is it? A dejected confession is the best comfort he can find in someone else. I think it's great writing. It's great writing for him. I know I'm really on this speech, but there's just so many different levels to it. I think the speech also acknowledges the similarities between him and Mark, which is why he felt comfortable telling it to Mark in the first place. Both Mark and Conquest are both feared by their own kind. They both are smart enough to understand they're stuck between a rock and a hard place due to their own powers. He also is very similar to the variant Marks that we saw, which had all been one butterfly effect away from our Mark. These changes, specifically with the monologue and Conquest, speak a lot about the Viltrumites and their future and what went wrong and what could be seen as a warning beyond the Viltrumite uprising. I think it's a lot of internal guilt and suffering that Mark will have to look into and be like, shit, maybe my dad and the other Viltrumites aren't okay and they need my help. Thank you to BetterHelp for sponsoring this video. Relationships are complicated, all of them, even the good ones, especially the good ones, and navigating any relationship takes a lot of work and a lot of introspection. If you find yourself stuck in a pattern of pulling away when somebody starts to get close or feeling jealous of your partner's friends, that's gonna get in the way of a meaningful relationship that could otherwise be enriching in your life. That's something therapy can help you with, and our sponsor, BetterHelp, can help you get started. Instead of being stuck in an endless loop of questioning yourself, you can talk through relationship concerns with someone who's trained to help you find real answers. BetterHelp has made starting therapy as easy as taking a quiz. Just fill out a questionnaire and you will be matched with a therapist in as little as a couple of days. Easily switch therapists anytime at no extra cost if it's not the right fit. They carefully make sure therapists on the platform are well qualified, and their customer support team is there to help you if you have any questions. With over 7,000 reviews and a 4.5 rating on Trustpilot, BetterHelp is a platform you can trust. Going to therapy is a sign of strength, not weakness. There are so many kinds of relationships that can be improved by therapy, not just romantic ones. Click the link in the description, scan the QR code, or go to betterhelp.com/newrockstars to get 10% off your first month of therapy. There's also this change that they made, more so they just didn't show. In the comics, before reaching the beach, Conquest drives Mark through a ship, which I think they didn't show this because last season's fight was also around a cruise ship, though when he reaches the beach in the comics, he's not smashing through people like he is in this episode. He's demolishing people in this episode. They added this to ramp up the madness and stakes. Conquest is just as brutal and unforgiving as the other Viltrumites, or at least acts like he is. They just wanted to show that with this murderous demolition of people. Additionally, in the comics, of course, it's a lot more gory, so in the show, they gotta match that bloodlust. However, I will say, after the episode about Powerplex and his sister dying in Chicago and the villain origin story there, I think it's essential to really see the casualties going forward now. Regular civilians are just as important, and that's Cecil's literal whole job, is just to protect the people of Earth. So showing the number of casualties directly shows us just how bad that person is doing it. The fight between Adam, Eve, and Conquest was a lot quicker in the comics. The comics did not feature the density being increased, the mace hammer, the walls, the harpoon, or the water part. Eve did not put up this much of a fight in the comics, I will say. That doesn't mean that she didn't do a good job, it's just more so, you know, this Eve was stronger in the show. And I think showcasing this significant change was to show how amazing of a fighter Eve is. Even half alive, she was a worthy opponent. This solidifies going forward to never really underestimate Eve. She may be the strongest hero on our planet right now. Speaking of being powerful, Eve reveals she's super powerful. Eve had mental blockers to limit her power, preventing her from manipulating sentient matter. Still, when something super traumatic happens, she can use her powers with no limitations, which is purely setting up Eve working within the means of her ultimate self. I think this goo costume just shows the blockers are now gone. When she first did something like this, we saw it in the Adam Eve spin-off special during a traumatic event, but she didn't die, and I assume her dying resulted in the blockers being killed off, and now she's just uber powerful Eve, and we'll see her ups and downs adjusting to the new powers in season 4. They also made changes in the finale from the comics with Shrinking Ray and Rex's funeral. Robot and Samson share the same speech that Robot only says in the comics, and as a reminder, Shrinking Ray is dead. He died in the comics after the battle with the Lizard League, and our Ray survived, and where I expected her to be in Eve's position at the funeral, she was alone, crying in the back behind the trees. So will this moment just ripple an effort against the superhero game forever with Ray? As Shrinking Ray's story is now fully original, I could see her speaking out and seeking a life away from being a hero because they're just tools. We had a similar sentiment and conversation with Duplicate and Multipole earlier in the season, arguing what makes them both criminals and heroes is really who hires them and how they were only taken in to be used as tools. Ray spoke about how she never got to live an everyday life and none of them really did, and now Rex is dead. So when they inevitably need Shrinking Ray back, I'm sure she'll treat them like Mark does to Cecil. There's also these dark sequences the finale made. It was a bit more sinister, like the sounds of Oliver being pulled apart were taken in such a vibrant, disgusting way. It's also the minor details where Oliver's tears fall onto Conquest, our boy, who runs into every fight just calling someone a turd or a butthole. He's finally up against a challenge and in pain drops some tears. I don't like it. I don't like it. And if these are tears, there's something to say about this half Viltrumite, just like Mark, who expresses their feelings and they support each other in this fight. We're seeing the benefits of these emotions that Conquest sees as a weakness. And finally, Damien Darkblood, who is kind of a joke in the comics, has returned in the finale and is bringing about a wild storyline. This also departs from the comics, so what I believe here is purely speculation to come in season 4. So we see Damien at the end where Cecil kicked him back to hell. I assume since we're now in the supernatural theme, not the supernatural. If this was the supernatural, I'd be about it. But you know, we're just getting into the supernatural theme. I thought they'd be linking this to Mr. Liu or maybe the Order, though it's important to acknowledge these demons are stuck there and need help getting out. So I don't think they're going to the Order. I don't think they're going to use Mr. Liu. I assume this would maybe be about Nolan, but that was just so long ago when Damien was investigating the Guardians of the Globe and Nolan in the first season, which is why I think it's Lensless Invincible who was trapped in the Shadowverse with Darkwing. I feel like Lensless Invincible is within reach or an achievable reach from hell where Damien is and the Shadowverse where they are to conjure him there. But after a recent interview, it looks like it's just gonna be Mark. In a recent article with Robert Kirkman about season 4 and how it's an original storyline, they spoke about the Damien Darkblood of it all, how the demon detective would pit Mark against Satan. He says in the comics he was never sent to hell, and he goes on to say every superhero story has some chapter where they go to hell and they fight the devil. It happens in DC and in Marvel comics. It's a big deal, and I never got around to doing anything like that in Invincible. I kept getting sidetracked and there was never a good time, so it's entirely possible that we may be doing something like that in the show, and that scene at the end of the episode is setting that up. So since we're getting into new original territory, I hope they don't take everything away. There's a really fun story with the Viltrumites that I really love. I just also love the Viltrumites. I know they're bad people, and you guys know I love a villain, but they're just a little conflicted. They're a little conflicted. Though there were changes made to the finale that we didn't see in the comics or vice versa, I feel the changes were made to bring a more despair and empathy to these characters and the world that they live in, especially setting up small details and motivations and values for the next season. Comment down below your thoughts on the finale to season 3 of Invincible. Let me know how you felt about the changes that were made. Did you like them? Did you hate them? What are you gonna expect an original new storyline for season 4? And tell me how much you love Conquest, because that monologue. Jeffrey Dean Morgan, he chewed that up. He loved doing that monologue. I love Conquest's monologue so much. Follow me at Lulu_Clemons. Subscribe to all 3 channels in New Rockstars Network for more breakdowns and news coverage of everything you love. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys later.